Welcome to the UP Notable Books Club, brought to you by the Upper Peninsula Publisher and Authors Association. Helen Raica-Klotz has a master's in English from Central Michigan University, and she teaches composition courses at Saginaw Valley State University. She's also taught writing at a regional prison, a homeless shelter, an alternative high school, and other places where she can find people with stories to tell. Her fiction and creative nonfiction has appeared in various publications, including the MacGuffin, Porcupine Literary, Dunes Review, Literary Mama, and Great Lakes Review. Helen lives in northern Michigan with her husband Steve and their large black lab, Atticus. Here she spends much of her time walking through the woods and avoiding grading papers and cooking.
Welcome tonight to the UP Notable Talk. I want to start off with an introduction. As some of you know, and maybe you don't, but I will not be the director of the Crystal Falls Library much longer. It is going over to Shirley Frank.
Hi,
She
Shirley.
is here and training. And so after the Zoom, Victor, if you can stay on for a few minutes, I want to talk to you and Shirley together about it won't take very long, a couple of things. I am headed off to India. I was the librarian here. I spent about 17 years teaching overseas, and I'm headed out to do it again. But this time I will be an overseas librarian, K-12. So kind of exciting. And the time zones work out. If all goes well, I'll be Zooming in like early in the morning to kind of join you guys, that's my plan, because I do really like the UP Notable Books Book Club, and it's been quite a few years of me and Victor and all of you working together. So tonight we are here to talk to Helen about her book, Superior Stories. But before we do, let's talk to Victor about any UPA news.
Hi, Evelyn. Thanks very much. This time of year, we start to get excited about the next issue of the UP Reader, which is our anthology, which is from contributors are all members of the Upper Peninsula Publishers and Authors Association. So you can write your short stories, poems, little bits of memoir, recollections of crazy things you did as a kid, which is my kind of favorite story. And join us as a member at www.uppaa.org and click on any of the join buttons. Join us as a member. You can submit your work to the UP Reader. You've got until November 10th, 2026 to turn it in. And then we have a jury process where we pick the very, very best stories, poems, memoir, and volume 11 will be published next year in April 2027. So it's really the only kind of publication of its type in the Upper Peninsula. It's comparable to the Walloon Writers Journal downstate, which I know Ellen Lord has contributed to, and we're really quite proud of it. So have a look around, go to upreader.org, and you can browse all of the back issues. Everything we do is in paperback, hardcover, audiobook, and ebook, so you can get started reading it today. Back to you, Evelyn.
All right. Thank you, Victor. Yes, they get checked out a lot here from our library. They're really nice compilations of, different and a wide variety of literature that you find in there, short stories and essays and poems. And then, of course, the kids, the Dandelion Cottage winners are in there as well. So you get a wide variety of writing from different even ages of people. So this is exciting, Helen. You got 9 people, 10 with Shirley here next to me, definitely, on a beautiful July night. You got to be proud of yourself. And of course, many people do watch the recordings, but so glad to be talking to you tonight about this book. I read it and I like these kinds of books. I like drama. I like gritty. I like real. I like things that make me think. And I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I reread it today, liked it just as much. Have some questions for you, but we want to hear from you first. So tell us all about your book and how it came to be.
Oh, well, thank you. And before I begin, a special thanks to Evelyn and Victor for hosting this. I'm incredibly happy to be here. And I always argue that librarians are sort of the last bastion of our democracy. And so thank you for all the things that you do and for supporting readers and supporting writers and supporting communities. It's great. So my heart goes
Thank you.
out to you. Thank you. Superior Stories has kind of a funny background. I always considered myself prior to writing this short story collection as a nonfiction writer. I wrote a lot of essays, I wrote a lot of memoir pieces, and I was at an Interlochen Writers Workshop almost a year ago, and I said to my instructor, you know, I think I'd like to try to write fiction. And she looked at me and said, well, good luck with that, because it's tough. And I said, okay, I thank you. So I started, each piece starts out with a creative nonfiction opening, which means a true story, a vignette, a description of weather, because I thought, boy, if fiction is going to be so tough, maybe I just ought to start out with what I know, which is to write nonfiction, and then see if any stories appear from that. So I ended up playing with these 6 stories for about 5 months or so, writing them and rewriting them. And I joke that the book itself is 45 pages, but if you take all of the revisions that I went through, the book was probably 375. And I was lucky enough to have some good readers that gave me some feedback, and I submitted it to the Michigan Writers Chapbook Contest. And this is an amazing contest. It runs every year. And a chapbook, because I get this question often, is a short book. So one of the things that's nice about Superior Stories is that it's petite. My friend says it's purse size. It's only about 45 pages. And this is true of most chapbooks. Chapbooks are short pieces that are usually thematically linked. Sometimes they're poetry, sometimes they're fiction, sometimes they're nonfiction. And I submitted to the contest, and I was lucky enough to win in the fiction category, which meant that they took my pieces and they published them, and it was able to get out in the world, which was such a gift and such an amazing thing. So I consider myself incredibly fortunate. I consider myself a learning writer. So this whole publication process of getting these stories together, to work with an editor to polish them up, and then obviously to be a notable winner, just incredible. So it's been a great experience so far. That's my story.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, I'm just kind of taken aback that this is your first crack at fiction, because it's pretty good. So
Well,
I think
thank you. Yeah. And
that's
again,
wonderful.
I have to acknowledge that I have written some fiction before. It was usually flash fiction, which is very short fiction. Um, but to write longer fiction was a challenge. And I have to also admit that there are some elements of truth within these stories. So for example, there is a story about a young girl in middle school who had a crush on Jesus. That was me. I had a crush on the image of Jesus and had on my bulletin board all these pictures of him. And I thought he was super cute, which my mother thought was very odd, but like most mothers, was incredibly tolerant. Um, and there's also a story that takes place in a bar. And I've been in that particular bar and heard conversations similar to these. So there are places that I think I pulled from my lived experience into the fiction, which was the only way, again, that I could make it work. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. I'm gonna just change my screen here so I can see everybody. Would you like to maybe answer some questions now from listeners,
Yeah,
or
I'd be perfectly happy to, and then I can talk some more or even read depending on what the group is interested in. So, does anyone have any questions for me or any thoughts about the collection?
I'm curious
okay.
about linked short stories. I'm thinking of, like Maeve Binchy, said some great work with that. What was your inspiration for doing linked short stories?
Well, I argue that again because I'm new at fiction. I was kind of a novice about creating all new characters every time, so there was a little bit of cheating on my part. But I also really wanted this to be true to my lived experience in the Upper Peninsula. I was born and raised in the UP and the Keweenaw, and
Okay.
there everyone knows everybody. We're all interconnected. So when you're introduced to somebody, you're not, oh, you're Helen Raica. You're, Judy's daughter, Helen Raica, or Rochelle's oldest niece, or she's one of the Biermans. So you're always placed in relationship to other people, and there's no getting around that. So it made sense to me to craft stories in which people were reoccurring in other stories because that's the way that life unfolds in these smaller communities. Yeah.
Whoa.
I have a question about that too. So, can you kind of go over some of the links for maybe some of us that maybe missed some? I
Oh,
caught some, but I think I missed some.
no, that's fine. So, one of the things that happens, for example, is, and I have to refer to this too, Evelyn, I'll be really upfront and say, I think I
Hmm.
know, but I'm not for sure. Um, one of the things that happens is that I think it's Timmy who has the young boy in Lake Effect Snow. Oh, Tommy. Tommy
Hmm.
lives in the English teacher's old house, and the English teacher was the mother of the girl, Trisha, that had the crush on Jesus. So that was
Okay.
one kind of overlap, right? So that was one
Okay.
example of that.
Mhm.
So there are a couple others too that off the top of my head I can't remember.
I caught like Cheryl, who was in the first story, whose
Yeah.
husband went into the water.
Yeah.
She appeared later in the bridge story.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
that's
Yeah.
the same Cheryl.
Yes,
Okay.
the same Cheryl who's now moved to Florida and is listening to her friend, who's a social worker, tell her things that a social worker probably shouldn't tell her. But because, again, it's the UP and these are small towns and they've been friends for such a long time, she discloses that information about someone else's story that's a patient of hers. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So there were just a couple moments where I thought, oh yeah, I could use this character again in passing. Yeah. Yeah.
I know we have more questions here, but does anyone else have it? Sue had her hand up. Sue Harrison. Hello. Unmute yourself, Sue.
There, I think I did it.
Good. Perfect.
These were beautiful stories, and I'm like Evelyn, very shocked that this is your first stab at a little bit longer fiction, and I loved how they were linked. And I grew up in the UP too, still live here, and that's the way things are done. And I moved into the town as a newbie. My father came to teach in the Eastern UP. And my husband always says, well, the only reason I started dating you was you were the only girl in our class I wasn't related to. So
Yeah.
that's you, Per. So once I married him, all of a sudden I had links, and that was so wonderful. Well, she's Neil's wife. She's Shirley's daughter-in-law. Um, I'm interested with how this worked in your head.
Oh,
Okay, you're switching from nonfiction, which I had the privilege of being a PR writer for Lake State for a number of years before I had any books published. Um, it was a difficult switch for me to take that job because I had only written fiction before that. And it was then difficult to go back into fiction after writing in a journalistic style. Um, did you feel did you feel a switch in your brain? Did you live more in the stories because they were fiction, get caught up by your characters, or did you live more in the nonfiction? Which consumed you more, or consumed?
oh, um, that's a really thoughtful question. I would say that the fiction consumed me more.
Okay.
And I'm going to back up and kind of back my way into an answer for you. So I'm by training an academic, so I teach at a small regional university downstate, and forever, it seems to me, my experience has been academic writing, which is transactional writing. You write to get things done. You write to communicate a certain idea. It's all very straightforward, and there's a framework that you have to follow, and if you don't, you get in trouble. So I thought creative nonfiction was like so freeing. Like I could do different things. I had to be truthful, but I could do different things. And then I started writing fiction, and it was crazy because anything could happen, which is liberating and also terrifying because you're the one that has to make that decision. And how do you know that it's the right one? So, for example, when Tommy, one of my characters who's really struggling, he comes home and he's in this relationship that's really challenging. In part, we discover because he has a child who's disabled. What is he going to do? Because he has a father on one side who's asking him to come and see him, but he also feels this obligation to be supportive of his wife and his child. Like, how does he negotiate that? And there is no answer. It's not as if I'm telling the story of my uncle and I know how it turned out. So I spent a lot of time, 375 pages worth of coming up with alternative endings and different ways of thinking about that. And because I really wanted to be truthful to my characters, even though they were all made up. I wanted it to ring true. And so it took a lot of thinking to do that. So yeah, I would be driving to work and thinking about Tommy, and then I would be walking the dog and I'd say, maybe, no, that he wouldn't do that. I would back and forth. So it made me deeply respect people that write novels because I cannot imagine living in the framework of a novel for pages and pages with all these characters for such an extended amount of time. I think I would, I don't know, maybe like lose my mind. I'm not at the point of envisioning that. I think that would be really difficult. Yeah. So I guess the short answer is with creative nonfiction, I feel like there is the basic story, and then the choice is how you tell it, what moves you make to tell it. With fiction, it's, well, the story's up to you and it could change at any moment. And that's harder.
I loved how you began each story with the nonfiction. And I didn't realize why you had done that until you just explained it to us of making the switch start with something, it was very effective. It was very effective.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh. Okay. So Charlene, I don't know if you hear us, but you've got to mute your second computer there because we're getting feedback. Okay. That'd be great. All right. I think I even muted her, or somebody did. I don't know. Maybe it was me. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was going to talk a little bit about those intros too. I also wrote them because I felt like many readers, I knew I was going to enter these into the Michigan Writers Chapbook Contest. That was my goal. But I also know that they have a tendency to publish people from Lower Michigan. And so I felt like there are places that my readers may not be familiar with. I need to explain to them what the black sands are, where they came from, what they look like. I need to explain to them why the bridge is significant and it's a cultural icon for the Keweenaw. And it was kind of the same thing with weather. Like people will say, oh, you're from the UP, weather. And you're like, yes, but I want to explain to you weather, right? So part of it was trying to use the landscape and the area and the weather to help people see it more clearly. And And then once I had those, I thought, well, maybe they're also operational metaphors, right? So, the bridge becomes a metaphor, the black ice becomes a metaphor, maybe in my head it was anyway. But it at least gave me a place to jump from into a story. But I really felt like, I sometimes feel like people think about the Upper Peninsula as this place that's, well, two things. They'll say, oh, you're from the Upper Peninsula. Did you grow up with indoor plumbing? Ha ha ha. And then you smile very tolerantly and move on. But they also will say, oh, it's God's country. It's so beautiful. And it is. It is very beautiful. But I also wanted to emphasize that it's also a very harsh landscape. And it's also one that man has made an impact on, right? The black sands are an example of that. And throughout the UP, we have examples of how industry came in and changed the landscape and altered that landscape. And so it was really important to me to depict that a little bit, and to make the place more real. I have to tell you that when my editor read it, he said, you should really try to get rid of these intros and just integrate them into the story. And I tried, and it just seemed weird. Like all of a sudden my character would say, and the black sands started because, and they held forth. It was just awful. So I finally said, yeah, John, I can't do that. It's just how it is. This is just how it's going to be. And he said, okay. But most of the people that have read it say they really appreciate that structure. And so I'm glad that that's the only change that the editor suggested that I said, yeah, I don't want to do that I didn't do. So that's how that turned out. Yeah.
Good question, Sue.
Yeah, that was a very good question.
I want to say one quick thing that you said there. I think another reason when I read a book, for some reason, even though I have very poor vision, so I don't get visual images too well, you begin with this structure that has a box around it. And it is the nonfiction is the explanation. As a Uper, I love to see those explanations because, like you know that a lot of people don't know what black ice is. A lot of people don't know. And I didn't know about the bridge, that you talked in, because I've only been up the Keweenaw a couple times. So, and so I knew it was there, but that was it. And then you go into the story, which is very free flowing and doesn't have margins, even on the left side. And so I like that box, and then we flow. And I love that. I love that it had structure, and then we flow. And so thank you for it.
Oh, thank you.
I see that as like a metaphor for the UP in a way. Like we've tried to tame it. We've got our roads, we've got our infrastructure, but there's so much wildness around us. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear you guys say this because I'm working now on a more stories. There's some interest from Wayne State, their Made in Michigan series, about doing a larger collection if I can put some together. And I want to keep this structure. I really feel comfortable in the structure. And it may get tired, but we'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. I've got lots of ideas and not enough time, so you never can tell.
I see Ellen had her hand up. Ellen, you still got something to add here?
Well, yeah, I love the structure too, and I like the genre blending of the creative nonfiction and then the fiction. And I know your editor, John, and he's a big one with subtext. And so I looked at the beginning, the description is a big piece of early subtext. It just sets the mood for what's going to happen. It tells where, but it gives you that weather or the drowning or what the sand, whatever it is, and then you go into the story and you just can't forget that feeling. So I love the way you did that. I've never seen it done this way. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had some really interesting conversations because, I again, the chapbook limits you in the number of pages and the structure. So I did 3 that were linked with the theme of drowning and 3 that were linked with the theme of weather. And again, it was in my head, I was thinking about actually, of course, there's a drowning victim in each of the 3 drowning stories, but in that collection, I was thinking of people who get drowned in conversation. You know, that experience of how you're having a conversation, someone just keeps talking at you over and over and over again. And so to me, that was the Drowning in Stories collection. And the weather collection was about people making choices. And so I was thinking it was like whether or not, as well as weather. So
Oh,
again, that was the subtext in my head. Doesn't matter if any reader gets it, but that was what I was thinking of. And it helped me pull those stories together, like which story goes where and how do I make that then fit. And so that was another reason that was helpful to me as a writer in that process. Yeah.
well, that's good because that second story is, you know, are they cousins? But the one is just bulldozing the conversation, and the other one is falling back. So
Yeah.
that's really good that you added that
Yeah.
comment. We have a few messages here on the chat. And I know it's hard when you're talking to follow these. So I was just going to bring this up
Oh,
that
please,
KM
please.
Heiderman said that she suggests that the landscape itself is kind of a link between the stories, even more powerful than the characters.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. And I'm going to give a shout out too to Sarah Maurer, who, if you haven't read it yet, A Good Animal is one of the best pieces of fiction I've read in so long.
Absolutely.
And she does landscape really well. So kudos
Thank
to
you.
Sarah. I probably never would have tried to write anything had I read A Good Animal prior to that process. But it's a really impressive piece. But yeah, I like landscape. I think those of us that are lucky enough to have been born in one place and raised in one place, we carry that landscape inside of us. It doesn't leave us. And you know, I think that it's funny. I remember growing up in the Copper Country, and our house was right on the highway, on Highway 41, in one of the old miners' houses. And across the way, you could see Torch Lake, you know, the lake where they dumped all the black sand. And I remember sitting in my bed and I would read and I would look out this little tiny window that was in my bedroom and I would think, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to leave. Someday I will leave here, you know? And so lo and behold, you know, I leave. But every time I sit down to write something, the Keweenaw comes back in. I cannot get it out of my writing. It's always in the back of my head. So I think about that often, that we often leave places, but they don't leave us. And if we're lucky enough, they will shape a lot of our work. So yeah, it's just very cool. It's very cool.
One question here, so you've spent quite a few years teaching, you know, you're a teacher. How does that affect you as a writer?
Oh, well, like most people who I think become teachers, they become teachers because they love something deeply. So I love to read, I love to write, and so it made sense that I would become a teacher. I have to tell you, I come from a family of teachers. Like we're all teachers, and when I told my mom I was going to be an English major in college, she said, "Oh, so you're going to go into teaching?" And I said, "No, I'm just getting the English major." And she said, "Well, God help you, because what else will you do?" And so I ended up, you know, getting some more education and being lucky enough to get a job teaching college. But what happens, I think, when you teach is that you're so busy teaching that you don't create the time to teach yourself or to devote time to your own craft. And so that was kind of my story. I ran a university writing center for a while. I taught multiple composition courses. I ran a composition program. I did all of those things that were very important and worthwhile. But then COVID hit, and I distinctly remember sitting in my living room and crying with relief. Like, oh my gosh, I know this is terrifying and this is a global pandemic, but I think I might have some time to do some writing. That's such an inappropriate response to the situation we were in, but that's how I felt. And so I did. I started writing a little bit because my load had been reduced, and it was wonderful. So I made a conscious shift to step back from the teaching and to take more workshops and more classes and really start to practice with a lot more intent this craft. And it's been really wonderful. I've met amazing writers. I've been met wonderful readers, and I've also learned so much. This is it's a craft and it's an art. And even though I teach composition, this is something completely different. It requires a different way of thinking about the world and a different way of approaching your writing. And learning more about it has been really wonderful, really great.
You're going to appreciate this story, but I'm going to make it very quick. So I was a teacher for 24 years, and somewhere in there, I had to go to Northern and take some test. And in the test, I got to write an essay. And, you had an hour and a half to write it. And there were 100, maybe 150 teachers there that were doing this essay. Everyone was done in no time. I used the whole hour and a half. I was so excited. I was so happy. I wish I had a copy of it. It was the best thing ever. Because you never get to give yourself homework. You're so busy. So I totally get it. That's a good story you have there.
Yeah. But it also is great because it makes me appreciate, I had forgotten how hard writing is. And now I look at my students and I think, oh, it's hard. This is work. It's a good memory. It's a good reminder. Yeah.
Oh, very, very good answer to that question. Do we have any other questions out in the audience tonight?
I have a question, or
go ahead, Sharon.
Comments or whatever, Now that you tell me that you started with your thought, like black ice, for example, I was kind of amazed that you went into that young gay, person and what he went through. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I'm trying to see the metaphor in it, because in the end, he wrecked his watch and he put the key there and he's done,
Yeah.
He doesn't want anything to do with that rich guy, and, so it's like, I'm seeing a transition, black ice takes you, I have hit black ice with my car. And so, and almost out of control and everything else. So, I mean, that's a UP thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in the UP all my life. I've lived in Sittingness up until I moved to the Sioux, and so I'm a Uper, but I came from a small town, Sittingness, and I came from a very, very large family related to half the community in Sittingness. And so everybody knows everybody, and it's, not as small as Keweenaw, but,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to envision even your bridge and how part of that Keweenaw Peninsula is actually an island because of the canal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I visited there, but I didn't know that existed like that,
Yeah.
I like how you did the nonfiction part in the beginning, because it all relates to the UP and what I really know,
Mm-hmm.
the weather, the black ice, all the other things. And so, and I'm an author too, and I've written some fiction. And so to me, I just get into my characters and it kind of takes off. And I've actually written novels, and so has Sue, but yeah, so I can go there, I'm working on one right now, that's, I think I'm 36,000 words into it now.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really
So I
great.
can relate to that, but not done yet. I have a lot more to do, but yeah. But I'm getting into my characters, and I'm liking them, and it's like they're becoming part of me,
Mhm.
So it's kind of neat to learn that was kind of you, with the Jesus thing. Were there any other characters did you get anything from a student or anything that you kind of went off of, or any other situations?
Well, yeah. So there was actually Tommy's based on an amalgam of about 3 different people that I know. But I once had this lovely student back when I was teaching in the community college. So this was maybe 20 years ago. And he was just brilliant, lovely, and he always kept a copy of Thoreau's Walden in his back jean pocket, and he would pull it out and read it randomly. Just the kind of student you want in an English class. And he came up to me and he said, at the end of the semester, he said, "Hey, I just got to let you know I'm dropping out because my wife, she's pregnant, and I gotta get a real job here." And I remember distinctly the look on his face, because he clearly wanted to stay. And I said, I'm happy for you, but I'm also sad to lose you as a student. And he said, "Yeah, and my dad's really sick. It's just like the perfect storm." And then he walked out. And I thought, oh, so when I came up with that
The
story,
loss, right?
I was thinking about the perfect storm, right? That whole idea of being pulled in these different spaces and directions. And so that was one example. But
Why
yeah,
did you make Sammy blind? Why did you
I'm
make the
sorry.
baby blind? Why'd you make the baby blind, Sammy? Blind.
Um, because I was thinking about how it's all about what you see and what you don't, you know.
Okay.
Um,
So
that's
it's a
kind of
metaphor.
yeah, I was kind of thinking about that. Yeah.
And then she's
Like,
kind of wasting away because she's not taking care of herself.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. But again, these are like for me, there are times where I really want the metaphor to come out. And maybe, Ellen's a poet. She can probably speak to this very clearly. There are times where I write and I think, oh, I got to make that metaphor clear. I want you to get it. But sometimes it's just in my head. Like, I'm thinking this. And if you get it, great. If you don't, that's okay. It's just for me. And it helps me move the character forward. So when you say like, oh, black ice, I don't see how that connects to Jake's character. I was thinking about the shattering of the watch, and I was thinking about like what lies underneath. And I was also thinking about like the danger, like he's in a relationship that isn't healthy. And he could also go into this other relationship, which wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
healthy. Like, what's he going to do? It's slippery. He can't really win with either choice, right? So so I was thinking about that. But again, if you as a reader say, "Yeah, that wasn't clear to me," I say, "Oh, that's okay." It just helped me create the situation and kind of play with it. And you knew that it was spring in the UP, which is a misnomer because it's still covered in ice and it's still going to freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw. And people are going to
Mm-hmm.
drive up to the high school parking lot and, do U's as fast as they can and drink beer and have fun. I mean,
When
that's
is spring in the UP? When is it?
I don't know. I,
You know?
I remember that my dad got in a car accident on my birthday because he hit a patch of black ice and went into a snowbank, and it was April 29th. So, spring is an elusive creature, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, I had a snow day I taught too for 15 years at a college, psychology classes, but so I know about the teaching thing too. But yeah, the black ice can take you off guard. And to me, it kind of looked like, he's got some scary choices to make.
Yeah. 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 And that's kind
Unpredictable
of, yeah,
choices.
and that's kind of what I meant. Like, that's what I was thinking about is like black ice, it could be fine, or you could skid off, or you could
Hmm.
crash through. You just never know. So that's in my head, that's what I was
I
thinking.
somehow managed to gain control of my car and I didn't go into a snowbank, but it did take me off guard.
I'm glad.
It was a bit scary,
Yeah,
because all of a sudden you're sliding,
yeah, I
and the
get it.
road looks fine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's going into two scary relationships or two scary, unpredictable things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any,
Thanks, Sharon.
yeah, thank
Um,
you.
anyone else? Do you have any questions? You were going to ask about the
Yeah.
drowning.
So since we're talking about characters, right, and metaphors that I had a hard time understanding. I really enjoyed all the stories, of course, and I enjoyed the intros. I have a natural science background, so that really pulled me in. But the one, I think it was the Sands, the one where they're at the funeral talking, the cousins are talking, and the girl in the end, the woman in the end is remembering the young boy that drowned, and she's describing feeling his skin and the feel of his skin and looking in his eyes. And I guess I didn't know what you were saying. Did she have something to do with his drowning? Was she playing with him in advance, or like how did she connect with him before he actually drowned?
So my sense was that I wanted that to be a little ambiguous.
Oh,
Well,
I don't think I didn't think that she drowned him, like literally pushed him under and drowned him. But the sense there was that he was a boy that she was sort of pushing away, because she didn't want to be around him, and he went under, and it was clear he couldn't swim, and she went off and with her friends, and when she came back, he had drowned. Now, what
Okay.
happened in the meantime is unclear, but she clearly carries guilt about that, and that's what I thought was interesting.
mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah, again, I think the first two stories, because the first story, of course, is about a bartender who's remembering someone that got a concussion one night and then ended up later, obviously driving into the lake, which could have been caused by the concussion. And I'm always really interested in this idea of how we carry shame and guilt, whether it's warranted or not, we carry it. And I also think that when we feel, at least this is true for me, when I feel shameful about something, I don't like to think about it or think about it too carefully. So I tend to compartmentalize it or put it on the shelf, and then something will come up that reminds me, and I'll hover around it, I'll remember it, then I'll pull away. And so I was just kind of interested in that emotion, I guess, is how we deal with things that we feel guilt or responsibility for that turned out badly, and what do you do with that? So that was what I was interested in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
that whole story, I have to tell you, I met a friend that I graduated with, dear friend of mine. She lives in Tennessee, and she was up in Michigan. We got together, and we were talking about growing up, and she lived in Dollar Bay and I lived in Tamarack City. And she said, oh, you had such a great life because, your parents were pretty cool, and you had friends in Tamarack City, but Dollar Bay, which is, like 8 miles down the road. My life was really different. And she started talking about, like, she had older brothers and family dynamics. And she said, and another friend and I would hang out together. And she says, and we were little savages. Don't you remember? That was that line. And I was like, oh, we were little savages. And there's a piece of me that kind of like, I remember that, like being able to run and do whatever, and you had to be home by the time it got dark out, but you could do anything. And you could like be in anybody's backyard and go check out anything, and no one worried about you. No one gave it a second thought. You were just running wild. And that brought back all of those memories of things that I remember doing as a kid that, boy, if my kids were doing that, I would freak out. Like, you were where doing what? But at the time, that's just what you did as long as you came home in one piece. Yeah, so I that's one of the stories that is not it's somewhat based in reality, not the drowning part, but the running wild and doing dumb things because no one's looking and you're bored and no one cares. Like it's being a kid back then. Yeah. So I think it's different now, but that's just my theory. That's my theory. So I also wanted to say, I guess, that I'm currently in the process. I've got 8 stories in kind of skeletal form. Again, all set in the Keweenaw. I've got some characters that I'm considering and thinking about. So that's my current project. And it will probably take me quite some time to put it together, but that's what I'm working on. But the other thing that I've been working on for the past year or so is I think I mentioned I was born in Munising, Michigan, and I lived there until I was about 5 years old. And when I was born, I was the first grandchild or great grandchild or step grandchild for 6 women, and they all lived in the same town of Munising, Michigan. So when I came, I was very special. And my mom ended up leaving my father when I was about a year old, and we moved into my great grandma's house. And my mom went back to school at NMU to get her teaching degree, finish her teaching degree. And I was raised pretty much by these 6 grandmothers. So my great grandmother was kind of in charge of me, but I would go to one grandma's house for the day and then another grandma's house. And I had all these cousins and I had all these people around me. And then my mom remarried and she finished her degree and she got a teaching job. She told me it was one of 2 English teacher jobs in the entire state of Michigan that was available at the time. That's how things were back then. And it was in Dollar Bay, Michigan in the Keweenaw. And so she said, we're moving. And I distinctly remember saying, but who will take care of me? And she said, well, we will. Your dad and I will take care of you. Your new dad and I will take care of you. And I said, what? And I remember thinking, 3 people? How are 3 people going to be taking care of me? Because again, I was raised by all these grandmas and then there were cousins and there were aunts everywhere. And I remember just feeling very lonely. So I'm playing with this whole idea of all these grandmothers, and it's been really fun. I'm about 100 pages in at this point with this memoir, but it's really fun because I remember thinking of all of them as grandmas. That's their life. They're a grandma. That's what they do, and that's what they are. And now I'm learning stories about them and thinking about them as women and their lives and the choices that they made. And I'm reading about epigenetics and how we carry, right, our genetic heritage. We carry our family with us. And it's been wonderful. And the reason I started this project is because my son said to me a while ago, Mom, I'm going to have a baby. Ashley and I are going to have a baby. And I remember thinking, I can't be a grandma. What do I know about being a grandma? And then lo and behold, my mother gently reminded me, well, you had 6 of them. And I've been grandmaing your kids for a long time, so you should probably have a sense of how to do it. So she was a smart lady. She reminded me I could pull it off. But playing with this has been really interesting because Munising is its own landscape with its
Can
own.
I ask you something about Munising?
Yeah.
Do you know Don Corp, the barber?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, he's my uncle.
Oh, okay.
In Munising.
Okay.
A lot of people know him.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big family. They had 9 kids.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And it's interesting because
very Catholic.
It sounds like it, if I may say. But it's interesting because, even though my extended family lives there, I really feel like an outsider when I come there because, I don't have any other than family connections. I've never lived there other than until I was 5. So that's a little bit different kind of writing and it's a little bit different kind of research. But it's been a lot of fun to play with that too. So
Are any of
Good luck.
those grandmas still
Good luck.
alive?
no, unfortunately not. But I have lots of aunts, and lots of cousins and uncles, and filled with stories, just filled. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I just love talking to you authors. There's so much that goes on in your head. Wow. I don't know how you do it all. It's fantastic.
Well, that's because we're not talking about like how much laundry I need to do after our phone call, and like the car needs an oil change. Yeah, because that's up in there too, but that's not interesting stuff.
Mhm. Ellen, do you have your hand up there?
Yeah, I'd like to hear you do a little bit of reading.
Oh, great.
Me too.
Okay. Geez, Ellen, you put me on the spot.
Oh, good. Yeah, you're hard to put on the spot.
Yeah. How about if I read? I'm going to just read the opening of the canal. How's that? We'll end our evening in the Keweenaw on the canal. Starts like this. Lake Superior is the heavyweight boxer of the Great Lakes. It weaves behind the tree line. It ducks just beyond the two-lane roads. It jabs its way through the rivers and streams. It pounds the rocky shoreline with relentless force. Here, the big lake stretches into the horizon, no land in sight. There's only water and skyline in the far distance, blues and grays blending into one another like a child's muddy watercolor. Michigan's Keweenaw Peninsula, the state's northernmost section, sticks out 150 miles into Lake Superior. It's the peninsula on the peninsula, this strip of land and rock. Almost 200 years ago, copper mining companies and the U.S. government decided to dredge an ambling river used by the natives for fishing, expanding it to reach the east and west sides of the lake. This man-made portage canal became a sharp 40-mile line, slicing the peninsula cleanly in half. The upper part of the Keweenaw is not a peninsula at all. It is an island. The streets of Houghton on the mainland side and Hancock on the island side tumble towards the canal. Businesses and houses cling to the surrounding hills, cluster together near the bridge that links the two towns and small villages beyond. A bit farther south, Michigan Tech glitters at the water's edge. Portage and Torch Lake connect the canal from the north, making up the rest of what people call the Keweenaw Waterway. Keweenaw is an Ojibwe word for the crossing place.
Thank you. Yeah, very good. Okay. I think that's a great way to end, unless we have any other burning questions or comments. Okay. My favorite line, I got to sneak this in. I love that line that when you were talking about skiing, that it looked like corduroy lines, the snow. I love that. I've never heard that before.
Oh, yeah. That's what my husband's this downhill skier. We live by a ski hill, and that's what he calls it. He calls it fresh corduroy.
That's
When
what
they
it looks
zoom the
like.
hill, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but I never put that together. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm anxious to read more, so we will keep our eyes open for new things coming from you, hopefully soon. And thank you for talking to us tonight.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate everybody. Thanks for reading and thanks for being here tonight. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, and next month is Piracy on the Great Lakes by Michael Klassen. So that will be we're always the second Thursday of the month at 6 Central, 7 Eastern. So hope to see you all back next month. Thank you.
You've been watching the UP Notable Books Club, brought to you by the Upper Peninsula Publisher and Authors Association. To join or for more information, please visit us at www.upaa.org. Or www.upnotable.com.